This is Fam Electric Ghost. We're live on the air with Samantha Jones Darling for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Like we love to talk to people live. That's our kind of jam here. But we're having you on the show for the first time today. And before we get to the heart of your story, you're an author, and
Mhm.
you're also a healer.
Mhm.
And what we're going to talk about is like the process that went through to write your books. But before we get to that, we always ask a couple questions of any guest. One of them is like, what motivates you?
What motivates me? What motivates me? Ooh, that's such a great question. How juicy. What motivates me? You mean what motivates me to create, or what
Yeah,
motivates me just in general?
yeah. Like what like why do you do what you do? Like what motivates you to do? What your primary
Well,
activities as an author or creative?
yeah. So, it's very interesting because, there's an art to everything, right? And I'm sure we're going to talk about that a lot. But for me, what motivated me to write the books that I've written so far is that I grew up in a space that was devoid of art, that was devoid of light, that was really empty and just really challenging, and I had no help and I had no instructions and I had no light. And so when I went through the darkness and found the light, that's when I wrote down the list and the instructions and the books and the stories and all the things that brought me from chaos into stability and darkness into light. And so I was motivated honestly, by my younger self, right? Because when I started in the beginning, I was like, I need a list. I need a book. I need instructions. What do I do? And so I wrote books that have the instructions, but I also filled them with stories that were hopefully intended to be, well, they were intended to be, and hopefully are inspiring and help motivate people to take the next step that they need to take, because everything that we do can be really challenging, and hope and inspiration is basically my lifeblood. So I guess the answer is two parts. I wanted to give hope and inspiration to others, and then I also wanted to write down, instructions on how to do it.
Yeah, so kind of like a how-to in the how-to category, but from
Mm-hmm.
more like spiritual guidance or that
Yeah,
kind of
well,
point of view.
it's about bringing the spirituality into the practicality, right? And so I come from a background of systems and efficiencies and making things happen, and my family was a bunch of engineers, and so like
Mm.
we like to follow a list and we like to follow the instructions, and how do you get from A to B in the most direct route? And so what I've written about is how to get from A to B in the most direct route that I could find. And the A to B is how to get from disconnected to reconnected to your heart, which is where creativity and motivation and hope and inspiration live.
That's interesting because I've always kind of tread the needle between like a left and right brain, kind of logical mind, and the kind of artistic spiritual soul, which like artists are always talking about the muse, or they
Yeah.
get these downloads from the universe. And
Yes.
people who are like engineers or mathematicians, they kind of go, really? Because they're more like,
Exactly.
and they don't
Exactly.
really believe in the
Yeah,
foo-foo.
exactly. And so what I tried to do was blend the two, right? So there's like stories and then there's practicality. And you know what I mean? So I just put them both together. And it's very interesting what you said about what's the muse, because maybe this is actually the more correct answer to your first question. Truth is my muse.
Hmm. Yeah, I've always been really into like Victorian poetry, like Wordsworth, Tennyson, Blake, all the great Hawthorne. And they always had this idea of like the looking glass self. And
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of like when you self-examine, when you kind of
Yes.
go deep, and then they were going deep, but then they were in the Victorian era, so they had a lot of code words or things that were not direct, very indirect things. Even though they're trying to get to the heart, they're living in an age that's kind of like highly edited because
Mm-hmm.
because the people had certain morality, and they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get around it
Mm-hmm.
with like terms like little death.
Yeah.
They would like they put layers on things so it wasn't direct, but
Yes.
they were still trying to get to it, but they'd hope people would not like censor them, so they would have these like layers of
Yes. You know, it's the filters. The
Yeah,
filters, they don't go away. They just change form. They're shapeshifters.
yeah. That's always interesting to me is how you can get that kind of truth out there. And vulnerability is the big thing as an
Mhm.
artist is like
Mhm.
the permission structure to allow you to be vulnerable, to
Mhm.
allow you to have like happy accidents, to allow you to potentially not be perfect. Because a lot of art, if you're a painter, right, and you're using canvas and you put that brush stroke down, it's like, well, it is what it is. You can
Mhm.
try to correct it by shape, doing color merging or whatever you want to do. But like you committed, once you commit, you're given a direction. And
Yes.
sometimes like that's like a muse. It kind of gave you a direction. You have to go with it.
Yeah, and I find that I do suffer from perfectionism and I struggle with it and I'm trying every day to let it go. In fact, what's happening behind the camera is a disaster and I did it intentionally because I just wanted to see if I could focus while it was some like immersion therapy of chaos, right?
But yeah, chaos theories. Like a lot of times, like I'm a kind of jazz fusion, kind of like a comedian.
Mhm.
They kind of if they start bombing, they make a course correction in the middle of their set.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
so you can kind of deal with the fact that like in music there's this idea of there's no bad note, there's an opportunity,
Mm,
especially like in jazz. In
mhm.
classical, there is a bad note because like you're playing Chopin, you're supposed to hit the note that's on the page.
Right.
But in jazz, I could actually evolve the song. I don't have to be totally
Yeah.
like
And
wedded to it.
it's the same way in writing because there's a lot of books, most books follow a template. You know what I mean? Most storylines, most storytelling follows a template, right? And interestingly, when I wrote my very first book, it was a memoir and I hired a book coach to help me and she put my book into the template and when
Mm.
it got to the end, I actually canceled the publication of it because I was like this isn't right. I need to pull this back. And so I pulled back and did it again in a more authentic and kind of flowing way that didn't follow the template.
Yeah, like a flow state. Because sometimes the
Mhm.
template is good if you
Mhm.
don't have structure, you don't know what to do.
Right.
Then you follow kind of a like an outline. But a
Mhm.
lot of times, as you gain more experience and gain more confidence, and your true inner voice comes out.
Mhm.
And I always feel like people like to clone what works, especially in this
Mhm.
algorithmic age.
Yes, they do.
But like what's really unique about everybody is their secret sauce of their individuality.
Mhm.
And that's not really gonna be a template. It's gonna be you.
Exactly. Exactly. But then again, and then how do you sell that, right? Because what the algorithm wants and what people want is what they know, what they're familiar with, what they're comfortable with. And so then you get into the how can I sell the authenticity or do I sell out and do the template and get out what I need to say in just a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a spectrum. It's like how much of that algorithm can you kinda,
Yeah.
just accept and then try to sneak in your authentic self and have a good mix of your authentic self with something that actually will resonate.
Right. Exactly.
And it's always like that's a kind of a hard it's a hard thing to kind of synthesize because it's like it's not everybody's gonna hit it right off the bat. Like
Yeah.
everyone people want to go 0 to 100 and hit like knock it out the park.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like it takes time to actually get to that.
Yeah. It's talking about planting the seeds of your dreams. They take a minute to grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. In terms of like all the things you've gone through because you've traveled like a lot, right?
Have. Yeah, I spent 8 years traveling the world by myself.
Now, how was that experience? Was that something that you were like you just needed to do, get it out of your system, or something that you continued to wanted like world travel?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I've always loved to go to new places, and I always love and to. I like homes, and I like new places, and I like new things. But really, for me, there was a moment in my life where I was at a crossroads where I could either move forward or go backwards, kind of. And oh, Oh, I'm so sorry. There was a comment up there. I wasn't expecting that. Anyway, there was a moment where I could either go forwards or go backwards, or really, I didn't know what to do. And so I decided to take a completely different turn and just go see what the world had, because I had done so many things that were expected, right? That were the template. I lived the template, and going to travel was me going into the creative muse of the world to discover myself through discovering the world. Because when you travel, the world shows you who you are through the different lenses of each place you go through. And I was very conditioned by my past and didn't really know who I was. So I needed to see the world to see myself.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of like that growing and evolving. Sometimes you can't just stay in the same comfort zone.
That's right. Yeah, and I had everything in my life had changed, and there was like basically my slate was blank. I had a blank canvas, and I was like, okay, I can buy a condo and get a gym membership and go to Whole Foods, right? Or let me figure out if there's something epic I can do. And so I decided to travel and kind of follow in the footsteps of one of my mentors, Anthony Bourdain. He's a writer and a chef, and I come from the restaurant business as a writer as well. And, had spent many, many hours reading his books and watching his shows. And I thought, you know what, let me just go see what it looks like. And so I flew into Bangkok, which is the gateway city of the world, right? The gateway from the west to the east. And I stayed in Thailand for a month. And then I went to Cambodia, and then I went to Bali, and I stayed in Bali for 2 years. And I traveled all over Southeast Asia and did so many things, and it was really truly incredible.
Were you like journaling the whole time to kind of like knowing that you wanted to write a book, or did you just experience it and then later
You know what? I just was just experiencing it. There was so much happening, and I was going so fast because I'm an American, and that's what we do. We go through things quickly, and we just kind of hard charge at it. So the first year, 2 years, it was just me just like going through the buffet of life and tasting everything I could taste. And then after that, I really slowed down and started doing what I call immersive traveling, where I would go to each location and stay for 1 to 3 months, sometimes 6, sometimes a year, and really immerse myself into the new culture, into the land, into the systems, into their template, right? And taste what they had going on. And so it was a little bit of both.
That's really interesting, because a lot of times it's like it's hard for I think Americans sometimes don't want to do that. What I found is like they kind of have this very narrow focus. I actually have been an expat myself. I lived in Japan.
Oh, where'd you live?
Tokyo. For 2 years. Yeah, I worked on a business contract. I was there for 2 years with my whole family. My daughter went to a Japanese preschool and kindergarten. But
how cool.
Yeah, and it's a totally different experience, because you had some people who were there that never really immersed. They would go to the Hard Rock Cafe, they'd go to McDonald's.
Right.
And like we were going to every Japanese restaurant. We were getting invited to Japanese homes and get home cooked dinners, where other people, they just didn't really immerse. And they never really got invited into a Japanese home because they were giving off a vibe
Exactly.
that the Japanese wouldn't invite them.
Right, exactly. And I made a commitment really early on. I was like, I'm going to say yes to every single invitation, even if it's something insane. And I literally did. I said yes to everything. I've eaten at so many places. I've eaten so many animals. I don't even know what they are. I ate at one of those restaurants that serves all bugs. You know what I mean? I did. If they said, do you want to do this? I said yes.
Yeah, because like it's just interesting, because we would go to like every type of Japanese and Chinese cuisine, like real Chinese food, not fried food.
Right.
And it was this authentic food. And like in Japan, there's so many restaurants. You could go to like a German restaurant, actually have like a really high-end German restaurant in the middle of Tokyo, where you could go eat Dutch food, or you could go eat food from Malaysia or food from Singapore, like everything you could get to. And to me, it was just amazing just to learn. And one of the first things I noticed, we were going down a sidewalk, and you could see the Japanese were going one direction, and all the gaijin, or the Westerners, didn't notice it was a flow. and they'd be bucking the flow. They'd be going, everybody, 99% of the people are going left, and you could see the American or the Westerner is going right.
Yeah. You know what my favorite thing about Japan is? Because I have had an affinity towards Japanese culture and food my whole life since I was 12 years old. The first time I had sushi, I fell in love. And when I was in college, my senior thesis, I did it on Japanese food and culture. So I've been obsessed. And when I was going there the first time, I had a friend like yourself who had lived there. She was Australian, and she told me about the Japanese culture and how they love honesty so much. She said, Samantha, you can go to the mall, buy things, put your bags outside on the ground, go shop, and then come back 3 hours later and your bags will still be sitting there.
Yeah, it'll still be there. You don't have to.
And I was like, what? And so I tried it when I was there because I went with my mom, and my mom was like she could barely walk. She was kind of disabled. And I was like, Mom, sit right here. You know what I mean? And then like I put the bags near her, but not where she could get them, and like went somewhere and then like came back and they were still there. It was so crazy.
Yeah, I remember like if we had bicycles or I had my scooter and you didn't have to lock it, like in New York, you'd have to lock it to a pole.
Yeah. And it still might be gone when you came back.
Yeah. They find a way to break the lock, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, in Japan it's a totally different thing. And in the matter of like respect of not throwing trash on the ground, you know, throwing things, it was so clean. Like I was living in Moto Azabu, is near Roppongi. And it was this interesting, you know, going to the Japanese school, because we didn't go to the American school. We had our daughter like in Nishimachi, which is a Japanese school.
Oh, I love that you did that. That's so good.
And so many of the expats were like, well, we got to go to the American school. And I'm like,
no, you go to the local school.
I want to go to the Japanese school because I want my daughter to actually gain from the experience.
Yeah. And also you guys get to gain from the experience too, because the way that they raise and teach children is completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. She had like a sensei and she learned taiko. She was did taiko drumming, and there was just so much stuff that we were able to gain from our experience, because we try to keep a very open mind, and we would get invited to Japanese homes, and some of our business partners said, well, how are you doing that? Because we're not in the American club all day.
Tell me about your favorite dinner that you had at somebody's house.
Well, we had one of our at Nishimachi, my daughter's classmates, their family invited us over, and they did like a hot pot. They did a traditional Japanese hot pot, and it was like all fresh, home cooked. You know, you could go to the restaurants and get that, but this was a Japanese family giving us their home cooked version. And it was so good. I mean, it was just because it's a homemade meal, but it wasn't like an American homemade meal.
Right.
Or my wife's from Barbados, or Barbadian home cooked meal. It was a Japanese home cooked meal.
Right.
And it was just so much. And we had to like pay attention to the etiquette of like how we're supposed to behave at the table, and on the floor, sitting on the floor. And it's just a totally different, you know, we have to make sure you don't have your shoes on.
Yeah.
Your shoes at the the stuff that some Americans would just not understand. And they wouldn't take their shoes off. Things like that.
I know. Do we have time for me to tell you a story about a cool thing that happened to me in a restaurant there?
Yeah.
So I was in the restaurant business before I became a writer, and I worked many times in the sushi industry. And so I do not speak Japanese, but I speak Japanese menu. You know what I mean? Like I can order things and I know how to. And so I went into this very tiny little like hole in the wall restaurant in Tokyo, and walked in, and I was intentionally looking for like the local place that there was no Americans, you know, and I wanted to get all the way into the city, you know, I wanted to have my Anthony Bourdain experience. And so I went in there and I opened the door, and at the time my hair was twice as long and twice as blonde. So it was just like this big blonde, you know, American walking in, and I'm like, no. And I sit, and I'm the only white person in there, and I'm the only woman in there too. But it was like this cool little local neighborhood bar restaurant thing. So I sit down, and they're looking at me like, what's this girl up to? And I could feel that they're all looking at me, but they're not looking at me, you know, like side eye. And so I get the menu, and I politely wait, you know, and then the guy comes over, and I order in Japanese, and they're like, ooh, what's happening here? So then they bring my food out and they watch me as I open up my chopsticks and like exactly what I do and how I hold them and what I put them. And then as soon as I ate properly, everybody in there started speaking English to me and sending food over for me to try. And then they all came over, and next thing I know, I'm surrounded by everybody and they're talking to me and giving me things. And it was just the best.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I was sometimes in these little micro restaurants,
Mhm.
and sometimes they have these little micro. They only can hold like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
They're very small. Like they're not these big ones. They have these
It
like little.
wasn't big. It could maybe fit like 20 people in there, and there was like 6 of us.
Yeah, there's even like these ones that are even tinier. They're like
Mhm.
they're super tiny, and they're only meant to have a couple of people in them.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I went
wow,
to a
this is
I
so
went to
different.
yeah, I went to a tempura place like that. There was just like 6 seats at the bar, and that was it.
Yeah, that's it. It was so cool because you had so many different choices and so many different ways to experience things. And
Mhm.
I just didn't want to go to the Burger King. I didn't want to go to the Hard Rock.
No,
Like,
but
why
you know
should I do that? I'm in Tokyo.
You know what though? I totally agree with you. But in the beginning, when I first started traveling, I had an affinity towards wanting to try McDonald's in every single country.
It is different though.
It is different, and I wanted to see. And you know where the best McDonald's in the world is? In Bali. And I
Probably.
figured out why, because they are extremely good at following directions. They do not deviate from directions. So if you want McDonald's exactly how it's supposed to be, you go to Bali. Where was it terrible? Paris. It was
Paris.
the worst in Paris. And I was like, what is this
It's like
garbage?
French taste are different.
I know. I was so disappointed. I was
What are
like,
they doing? I remember they had like a shrimp burger. Like in Tokyo, they had like a shrimp hamburger that was made with a shrimp patty.
yeah. Well, then they have all the like different sauces and some kind of local things too. It's really fun to like go into the like McDonald's and places like that in other countries. And like the Burger King in Amsterdam had so many interesting things on there. I mean, it was crazy.
And instead of an apple pie, they had like a Japanese yam sweet potato pie. It had the
Hmm.
same kind of crust as the American apple pie, except it's a sweet potato pie. It's like Japanese yam.
Was it purple on the inside?
Yeah, it was so cool. I mean,
Yeah. I bet you could maybe get that in Hawaii. That's where Japan and America cross, you know?
right. Yeah, it's just cool. The food experience, like you being a foodie, being a restaurant person, like you must have had. It's interesting because you were able to immediately connect to the cuisine, kind
Mhm.
of mindset or
Yeah, well,
culture.
food, in the language of food, and that's actually one of the very first things I noticed when I was in Thailand, because I went to the local market and I do not speak Thai, right? And the
Hmm.
local market people, they speak enough English to like buy things for you to buy things, but there was no conversation. But that being said, I had a full on energetic, spiritual, intellectual, everything conversation with no words with this woman over food, and she could see how excited I was. And I was like looking at everything and checking it out. And and then I was like, and I just held it up, and then she would like mime to me, what do you do with it? And then there was like
Yeah,
this whole thing. And I just went home or back to my hotel. And I remember just sitting there and just like crying in joy and pleasure, because it was so cool to connect through the language of food that is within all of us in every part of the world. And that like if you care about ingredients and quality and food and stuff, that translates language on any level, like the art of food, right? And that's what it
yeah.
was. She was an artist and I was an artist, and she could tell and I could tell, and we were like, ah.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing because like nonverbal communication within like the arts, like food is an art, and
Mhm.
music is the same way. Like if you go anywhere and you're a musician, non-verbally, all musicians, no matter what culture they can come from, they can communicate without talking.
Yeah, you get the
Like
what's up and you can see each other. Yeah.
you
Hmm.
just kind of get a nod. You look at it, it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, are you in tune or
I
you're
see
not in
what's
tune?
Yep.
Are you getting the rhythm? Are you on the beat or you're not on the beat? It's like the things that people just it's just a universal that
Hmm.
people could pick up. You can go into a Japanese bass player, like pick up your groove. You're on
Yeah.
the piano, and boom, they're on it. And
Yeah.
it's like either you could do that in Germany, you could do that
Yeah.
in anywhere. It's like the language of music is just everywhere.
It's one of the most magical things you can feel, is that true connection with somebody through art, through creativity, through self-expression. And you're sitting there like, I see you expressing, I see you expressing, let's express together.
Yeah, I think it's just so universal because everybody's trying to put these walls up. Well, I mean,
Mhm.
the world has all these walls in separation,
Mhm.
and we're kind of getting more and more separated, but also we're all getting more like global. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a contradiction. The world's getting very global, then it's also getting separated and global at the same time.
Yeah, I know, it's really crazy. And it's like we have so much more access to each other, and yet we're so more disconnected than ever before.
And as a healer, like when you different modalities from different cultures,
Yeah.
where you just absorbing and then finding the commonalities, you know.
Yeah, well, what I found actually is that every spiritual teacher from around the world, no matter what culture, country, land, whatever you come from, we are all teaching the same things. It is just different words and different languages, but it is all the same. It is connect to yourself first thing in the morning, right?
Mhm.
Embrace some stillness, be quiet sometimes, listen, all these different things. And play, right, and be creative, and everybody's saying the same thing, and the process to get to yourself is almost exactly the same in all of the cultures as well.
Yeah, so like, it's so interesting because we're in such a noisy world,
Mm-hmm.
and with a lot of practice. I remember like being in Japan and in Tai Chi, and I'm a Buddhist. I find like in Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, I practice, but the idea of like just finding that kind of quiet.
Yeah.
Like if I'm in my practice of chanting Nichiren Daishonin with Japanese version of Buddhism, it's just a way to focus and get rid of the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start doing affirmations, and those affirmations kind of center you into kind of breathing exercise. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
slows you down,
Mm-hmm.
makes you kind of not get overwhelmed by over getting overstimulated. Because I think our society today has so many things like trigger. You get so many freaking inputs.
Yes.
People don't know how to like discern what's important.
Right, and they also cannot discern their own voice from the voice of the world, because there's so many voices of the world saying all the same thing that they just assume that that's what they think too, and they've never taken that moment of stillness to say, is this what I really think? Is this actually my value? Is this what I want to do? And they're just doing things because that's what's there, and it's the easiest thing because the voices are so loud. It's right there. Well, I better do this.
Yeah, I mean, studied in college. I was a sociology major, and
Ooh.
we would study the dynamics of the crowd, the
Mm-hmm.
dynamics of like the macrocosm, which is
Like
the
the
greater.
people get in line just to get in line, and they're like, I don't even know what I'm waiting for. I'm just going to stand in this line.
Well, yeah, we actually had a whole course studying the dynamics of a riot and
Mhm.
the permission structure. Somebody went to a gathering, and somebody throws a rock, somebody throws a brick. We if you deconstruct it and say, did you go there to do that? No. Like, well, what made you be able to think you could do it? Like, well, this person did it, so then that gave me a permission structure. So you see this kind of permission structure of the social gathering where somebody breaks
Mhm.
down the social conduct code
Yep.
in that moment, then you seem to forget about the rule
Well, it's the
and
same
you
thing with
fall.
vulnerability. It's the same thing with vulnerability. If one person throws their little rock of vulnerability, then the next person can throw their brick of vulnerability.
Yeah, it just opens up the gate. Like the gatekeepers and the
Mhm.
rules can kind of get broken. And in
Yep.
certain cases, like in vulnerabilities, like you kind of human beings, I think that you do want to share, but you've got the armor up to protect yourself because you want to be safe.
Yeah. Well,
Safety is
that's
like
why when
primary.
somebody throws the little rock and you can see that they're safe, then you're like, okay, let me throw my brick.
Yeah, and it's so many. We're all scared of that wolf at the door. Going
Mhm.
back to like when there was a real wolf at the door,
Yeah.
and now you have all these virtual wolves at the door.
Yeah.
They're maybe words or images or situations, and they make you feel unsafe, like the real wolf is that tagging at your feet.
Yeah. I know. And that's why we have to connect to the wolves we are within.
Well, that's a good way to say it. But like,
Are
what's
wolves.
the
There are wolves everywhere, but that's the thing. And actually, that is what the books that I write are about. It's connecting to your inner wolf, to your inner power, to your inner peace, right? Because a wolf knows when to attack and when to retreat. A wolf eats when it's hungry, right? That's it. A wolf knows what to do. A wolf is in partnership, right? A wolf is in a team. They're strong. And so we all have to connect to our inner wolf so we can deal with the predators of the world, right? But that doesn't mean you have to be aggressive. It doesn't mean you have to be, a fighter. It just means that you're ready for whatever comes at you.
I think that's really important to kind of be in touch with, what can make you feel more willing to try something. Like, as an artist, a lot of times in order to do something innovative, you have to kind of tip into the deep end a little bit. You're not going to drown,
Mm-hmm.
but you sometimes, and some artists will just go totally into the deep end.
Yeah.
Right. And other ones will kind of tiptoe or kind of gradually go over to the deeper side.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like it's a choice of what you're comfortable with doing, but like staying in the box, no matter what, is kind of like a no-go. Like if you're going to go anywhere, you can't stay in a box.
Yeah. I mean, if you stay in the box, you're going to wither and die. Right. And so, but what's interesting is as you were speaking, I was thinking, which one am I? And I actually do both. Sometimes I got to ease into things, and there's other times I'm ready to just plow right through. So I think it can, and that can really depend on how much inner work that you've done. It can depend on your mood. It can depend on the astrological planets of the day. It can depend on all kinds of things. Does your hair look good? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But one thing I was reading in your background, like you were homeless for a period of time, and how did that, how did you get out of it? What did you learn from it?
Well, I actually learned a lot of things from it. I don't come from a lot of money, but I had been empowered very early on in how to make money, and so being in a situation where everything was taken from me all at once overnight was incredibly shocking. And so it took me a minute to gather my wits, but it was hard, but I climbed out of it through helping others, right? So I was doing healings occasionally, and I was hosting, little workshops at my house occasionally. And so, but you know what, actually the truth how I got out of it is I surrendered the fight. Right. Because I was homeless. And so you're homeless. You're like, I have to get a job. I have to get a job. I need a job so I can pay my bills, so I can buy a house, so I can live in a house, I can buy food and water. Right. But here's the thing is, what kind of job are you going to get? Right. And for me at that moment, it was a crossroads that my spiritual team, whoever we call that, was putting me on to guide me and direct me into going into a new route. Right. And so, but I was sitting there in this darkness of having nothing and fighting, trying to get this job and trying to get this job. And I was going backwards because, like I've mentioned, I was in the restaurant business. And so I thought, let me just go back to what I know, what's easy, and let me make that happen. And interestingly, every time I would get a job and I would start going in there, I got a couple waitressing jobs because I was like, let me just make some fast money and get out of this hole. And so then I get in there and all kinds of things were going wrong. And and I'm not kidding you, to the point of there was a day where I was training and I was literally invisible to my manager, to my trainer, to the customers. There was a dude, I set a beer in front of him and he looked at his friend. He goes, where did that beer just come from? And I was standing there. And so at the end of that day, I was like, okay, I'm not supposed to be here anymore.
That's what you got the cue. You got
the cue. Yeah, my soul was like, I'm not playing this game. I don't know what you're doing, but we got to get out of here. She left my body and I was visible all day. And so on the way home, I was very upset, of course. And because it was like what I thought I was supposed to do. I thought it was what would get me out. And I just screamed a big fat F-bomb. And I said to the angels, I was like, and I was like, okay, I give up. And I surrendered. And then they said, are you done? And I said, I'm done. They said, are you done? And I said, I'm done. And so I surrendered. And the next day I went to the park and I opened up my truck and I was just laying there and somebody had given me a little smoke. And so I smoked a little weed and I was just chilling. And next thing I know, this old employee of mine who I had mentored calls me up. I tell him my predicament. he sends me all the money that I need to move into the apartment that I've already signed the lease for, that I had no idea how I was going to get the money. He sends it to me. And here, get this, is how I knew it was from above. I said, oh my God, thank you so much. I will pay you back. And he said, no, you're going to take that money so you can create with ease.
Wow. But that's the universe just gives you things. So, sometimes you're on that path.
Right. And so once I got into the house, then I was like, and it was very interesting, because then the next thing I had gotten a part-time job at a metaphysical shop. And there was a girl who I had met, and I was in New Orleans at the time, and she lived in Colorado. She came back from Colorado, calls me up, and she said, Samantha, can I just come to your house and you do all the things that you know how to do, and I'll just pay you a whole one flat fee? I said, yeah, we can do that. And that's when I was like, oh, let me host some retreats. And so I started hosting retreats, and that is how I got out of my homelessness, and how I became, or how I'm sitting where I am now.
The kind of universe gave you a path, and you were open to it, and you took it.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, a lot of times people might have a plan,
Mm-hmm.
and then the plan isn't what the universe plan is, right? It's like your human plan,
Right.
and it's like, then you keep on getting shown, it's like, this plan doesn't work.
Exactly.
I
kept pushing it. And that's what we do. And I knew in that moment that it was a big thing, because I needed to experience that to learn it, so then I can help other people in those same moments. You know what I mean? Because it is hard in this world to choose yourself, to choose the crazy thing, like the healing, right? Over the working in restaurants in New Orleans. Of course I was going to make money. Of course it would be easy. I would have been out of it like that. But the universe said, hey, no, why don't you try the easy way and let us help you while you do what you're here to do?
Yeah, it's hard to, like, self-actualize, because a lot of times the world is like naysayers, like, well, that's not how you're supposed to be in a box.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to follow the structural societal norms, right? The
Yeah,
kind of mores in sociology, like the more is what you should follow.
exactly.
And if you go outside the social norm, or the typical in the box,
Mm-hmm.
it can be uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. Don't lie. It's uncomfortable. But you don't grow, and you don't expand, and you don't get miracles when you stay in comfort zone.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think a lot of people make the mistake, because they'll look at some kind of, like, on the net, you have all these influencers, like, oh, 10 steps and 6 steps, and you'll get there. And I always kind of point out, well, the 10 steps, right, don't take into account, like, the 15 years plus the 10 steps.
Right.
Right. So, like, somebody who goes there, maybe it works, but maybe it doesn't, because, like, that 10 step is not just based in isolation to what brought you to the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, that is why it's really hard to write a healing book, because there are so many, moments of things, so many unplanned things that can come up, right? And that's actually when I'm working with clients, I have a thing where they can message me in between appointments, because life happens in between. Life happens, and we're like, okay, I'm working on this, and then something happens, like, oh wait, I'm going over here now, I needed this information, and so we have to stay focused but yet flexible, because the path is going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah, kind of path is kind of multi-directional,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of things are kind of, flow state.
Yeah.
And it like, I have talked to authors, like, they're like, fiction authors, and they'll have their outline, they'll have their structure, they'll have their character design, and then they get into a flow state moment, and it's like, oh
No, you got to let the book write itself. The book
some of that. Yeah, stuff doesn't, like, it was good that you went through it, but, like, the flow state kind of changed the direction.
And you're like, right, because I actually am I'm starting to write novels as well, and so I'm like, oh, here are my characters, this is what's going to happen, and then I start writing, and then all of a sudden the character's like wants to go do this, and I'm like, oh, well, let's do that, right? And so we go that way, and then the book takes a totally different turn. I'm like, I don't even know how we ended up here, but this is better.
Yeah, and it's like, the hard thing is, like, if you don't listen, and it's kind of like that situational awareness. Like, if you're, like, if you're doing, like, a public speaking event, and you've got your teleprompter, you get all your notes, you were practicing the night before, and then, like, a comedian doing a set, like, it's bombing.
Yeah.
if you stay to what was on the teleprompter, if you stay to what you
Mhm.
practiced the night before, you're gonna bomb. You gotta
100%.
have that situational awareness to adjust it on the fly based on it's not working, so you need to adjust it for the moment.
Exactly. And that, in that moment comes from being grounded in self-awareness, right? Be able to read the room. And that's a skill. There's an art to that as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, realize, you see an athlete that does all that training. They do all the repetitions and if they get hit with something they didn't practice, they don't just freeze. I mean, sometimes you get one that does freeze
Mm-hmm.
because like they're so into like everything has to happen the way I practiced. And
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't come in that way, then they kind of freeze up and say, "What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
And the one that has kind of this flow state, like, yeah, I have all this training, but if something comes, I'm not gonna just freeze. I'm gonna be
Yeah, yeah.
able to react.
Yeah, dude, the flow state quarterback wins the Super Bowl. The guy who can't gets smashed in a sack.
Yeah, because he's like so stuck on the plan.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like, this is what's supposed to be. Right?
And it gets like, oh, the plan didn't happen. It didn't
Exactly.
happen the way I foresaw it. But
Right.
it's so interesting. Like if you could teach one thing after all the things you've learned, and it's probably hard to do that, to pick
Well,
one thing you would teach.
I'm actually so glad that you asked that question. Can I show my book? Because this is the answer. Somebody asked me that about 6 months ago, and I was like, you know what? Let me just turn it into a book. This.
Oh wow, that's it.
Just 3 minutes to a new you. Okay, this has it has one lesson, right? It has one lesson you repeat 3 times a day for 30 days. And now you can do something different each of those minutes, right? But what it is three it's about building your spiritual six pack, right? And the
Mhm.
first thing you need to start with is being grounded, right? So can I teach you the most magical thing that I know? Yeah, you want to learn it? You want to try it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so there's something that I teach is called the magic breath. And what you do is you close your mouth and you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth where the back of your tongue is touching the back of your teeth is touching the top of your tongue, right? You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so it kind of makes like a seal. And then you're going to breathe in through your nose, but it's not like a sniff like this. It's not like that. You're going to pull it in with your throat and your lungs. So it's going to look and sound like a baby snoring. So it's like
Mm.
this. Can
Mm.
you feel it difference?
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you do that magic breath and you breathe in, we're going to breathe in for a count of 4, and then we're going to hold it for a count of 4. And then we're going to release it exactly the same way through the nose gently. It's going to sound like a snore for 4. Let's do it one time. Ready? All right. Breathe in. Now pause and release. Now, can you taste a little bit of that groundedness that we just brought in?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you do that 3 times in a row, that's when you get really super connected to yourself. That's where emotional stability comes from, emotional regulation, being grounded. That's when you can answer the question without faltering. That's when you can speak your truth without being afraid. That's when you can stand up for yourself. That's when you can draw boundaries. That's when you can be vulnerable. That's when you can create from the heart. Right? So when we are connected to ourselves, that's where everything begins. That's the foundation of who we are. And that is what I put in here is a 30-day program to learn how to do that. The magic breath that I just taught you is the easiest, most direct route that I have found to that. And if you do that just 3 times a day over 30 days, your life will be exponentially different.
Well, I think it's awesome to when you come up with like ways to you know, kind of practice, like a physical thing, like with your
Mm-hmm.
body.
Mm-hmm.
It also connects to your like spiritual and mental state.
Yeah. Yeah, because the spirituality, it lives in our soul, but we live in these bodies. And if the bodies are filled with chaos and filled with distraction and all over the place, we can't connect to our souls to create what's in our heart, right? And so we have to start with one. The first thing that we do is get grounded, right? And that's what this book is just 3 minutes to a new you. It's how do we ground into ourselves and stay in emotional regulation throughout a day? How do we be able to handle whatever life hits at us? Because We can't stop the waves of life from crashing down on the shores of our souls, but we can learn to ride them with grace and strength. Right. And so that is the first thing that I teach, is how do we do that? And then the second thing that I teach is letting go. And that's this next book, I Am Ready, Let That Ish Go. And ish is, a play on ish, right? And so the first thing we do is ground, and then we let go. And once we've done that, then we get into learning how to rest all the different parts of our body, rest our mind, rest our soul, rest our hearts. And all of this is intended to get us connected to the physical body, because the physical body is where stability and regulation and art and life and playfulness and creativity live, right? The soul can talk about it all day long, but if you're disconnected from your body, you're not going to be able to create what it is that's in your heart.
Yeah, it's like the pillars, because I think, I remember I was talking to a guy that was a fitness guy, and he was, had the six pack abs, he had like physical like specimen, but like he actually got honest and said, I was doing all these courses on how to have like the perfect body, but when I looked in the mirror, I didn't feel good. So he had to deal with his own self awareness, or like his looking glass self, and come to terms with, like, even though I've worked on this one pillar, my physique, he didn't work on the other pillars.
Exactly.
And you always have to kind of keep in mind it's like a holistic solution. You can't just
it is
one thing.
Yeah. And most people, when they start on there, like, they're like, oh, I'm gonna start taking care of myself. The first thing that we do is start with the physical body. We start with movement. We start with getting healthy. And this is a great thing to do. I, however, went the other way. I went from the inside out. And so I am now into my physical journey and have connected all of the dots. But interestingly that you said that, is the work that I've been doing, I've been calling it building your spiritual six pack, because there are, and in my book, I've got 6 pillars of information, and over a 6-month period, I have it designed where you work with one at a time, you build that muscle, you build that foundation, then you move to the next one. And I say 1 month at a time. Some people can get it in 2 weeks, then you can move to the next thing. Some people, it takes 6 weeks, then you take that time. And so it's not about the specificity of the timing. It's just about going through each module fully and becoming completely integrated with it before you move on to the next thing. And that's where we get hitched up a lot as humans, because we're in such a hurry and we want to hurry up and finish and hurry up and finish. But I like to teach people to go slow the first time. So you only have to do the study part once, right? It's like when you go to CrossFit and you have the onboarding and you have to do like 2 weeks of like the fake workouts to learn how to do all the things and learn the language and what does a WOD mean and what is this thing and how do I do a wall ball, right? You got to learn all that stuff. And then you build your six pack. And it's the same with spirituality. You got to learn a little bit at the beginning, kind of go slow. And then you start getting into the workouts that keep you strong and keep you moving. And then you can get into competitions.
That's interesting, because the music's the same idea. Like if you take a really complex composition, you slow it down. Like when you're going to learn each note, you take the time signature and you knock it way down so that you can actually get all the notes. And then gradually you start to speed it up to actually the time that it's supposed to be.
I did not know that. I'm going to definitely use that in my information center.
Yeah, because it's like if you try to get it all at once, if you take something that's like 6/8 or it's like really fast time signature, like if it's a complex note changes, you're not going to get it at that full speed. So if you take it down, I always had teachers, music professor teachers, I was like, and that taught me to take every composition and slow it down.
It makes so much sense. I'm telling you, I watch most of my YouTube videos at 80%. Because I need to go slow. I just want to listen to you one time. I don't want to listen and get distracted and have to come back. So I just slow everything down. In fact, I was wishing that they had slow down on Hulu last night, because I was watching something. I was like, damn, they're so fast. Can you just slow down a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting today, because if you think about it, I'm a child of the 70s, and I always point out, if I go back and look at a movie from the 1960s or 70s, my daughter, who's 25, she said, this movie's pacing too slow. It's boring.
Right. I started okay, so I'm 1975. I was born in 1975. I started rewatching the Little House on the Prairie last week just to see. Oh my goodness. That is nicely slowly paced.
I kind of enjoy going back and watching those slower paced shows. I
I
go
do.
back and it's like a lot of stuff. Like our attention span is so like we got to have the quick cuts. Like all
Mhm.
the film is like designed to do these like very quick cuts and
Yeah,
to
it's
get
too much. I
something.
can't take it. I
Yeah,
cannot take all the quick cuts. In fact, the newest trend on YouTube is the one camera no edit situation where you just set the camera up and start talking to the camera. I'm like, okay, so now we're back to the beginning again. Excellent.
yeah. Well, it always goes back.
Now
People
I'm gonna
go
jump
retro.
on the wave, right? Now I'm gonna jump on the wave because I can't keep up with all the editing and all the edits.
Yeah, I was watching like my daughter was showing me this YouTuber, and they had so many cuts it was overwhelming.
Yeah, I
And it
know.
was like,
I started leaving comments and being like, you don't have to do that much. You don't have to talk that much. You don't have to go that. I'm just telling people, I'm like, I don't even care. I just need to be heard.
well, they're throwing all these special effects and doing stuff and like throwing these things in. I'm like, do you really need to do that
Yeah.
to keep the attention of this audience? Do I have to throw all these bells and whistles in,
Yeah.
or
Well, that's
can I actually say something?
that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Is it the template or is it the creative from your heart? And what they're trying to do is stick to the template and be so loud and so intense in the template that they combine the two. But they've gone. We're in a spectrum, and some people have gone really far with it.
Yeah. Well, and it gets into the AI where
Mhm.
people are correcting your eye position. They're correcting, like pulling the arms out.
Oh my God.
And then what I fear is like you get a bunch of young people that don't understand that people don't really talk like that.
Right.
People don't actually look like that when they really talk. So
Right.
if you make things so perfect that when people see an actual real person,
Mhm.
they get uncomfortable with the real situation because it's not the way you're seeing it on the net.
Yeah. Yes, that's actually a very scary thing that's happening, and I'm AI can be very useful in a lot of senses, but I'm pretty terrified of what's going to happen with it.
Well, I just worry about when you pull the idiosyncrasies of art is sometimes we have these happy accidents. Sometimes it's not exactly perfect, but that
Mhm.
actually makes it endearing.
The wabi sabi.
Yeah.
Wabi sabi, you know that term, don't you? It's from
Yes.
Japanese culture. But
Yeah.
for the audience, wabi sabi is when something has a slight imperfection and that makes it better, like the mole on Cindy Crawford's face.
Yes. And then if you get this people like they want to edit it out, edit
Right.
or like go and Photoshop it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the problem I
Mm-hmm.
have in music today. I get these kids like I'm a producer and they're like they'll do like 100 takes trying to get everything to a mechanical timing that doesn't feel human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, that might technically be perfect, but it has no life. It
Yeah.
has no soul. It
Yeah.
has no heart.
Yeah.
And I don't think you really want to do that. I
Mm-mm.
think we want like this take number 6 has some imperfections. It has some mistakes, but it actually feels
Right.
more honest. It
Yeah.
feels more human. I would go with that. And they were like, "Oh, no, I don't know." It's like, no, it's like that's kind of what people used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it does have some impact. Like when
Yeah.
if you see somebody doing a live play in New York, like a one act, an actor, and like every night you go watch it again, it's like their lines are a little different, how
Yeah.
they do the character. And then somebody might say, like, how come it's not the same? Like, do you really want it to be the same?
Right. Or what about like musicians, and you're playing the same song over and over again, but every time it's a little bit different, right? And then the drum solo is a little bit different, right? Or something like that. And it's so much fun. Or, they change the words, right? For the moment of the day or something like that.
Well, Bob Dylan, real famous. Like Bob Dylan was famous, like in the '70s and the '60s,
Mhm.
for taking his classic songs, and then when he did them on stage, he would change the lyrics.
Yeah.
He would have so there Dylan fanatics like me, like the collectors,
Yeah.
have all these different versions of like his classic songs from live versions because he would change the story.
Yeah.
He would add verses, take away verses, change dynamics, change everything, and it was kind of cool to see the song evolve or change over time. It would become a different song in some ways.
Well, that's the beauty of storytelling, is it evolves. It's meant to evolve. You tell the story and you do it this way the first time, and the next time you do a little bit more over here, or a little bit more over here, right? And a little bit more over here. And then like, oh wait, let me try this again, right? And that's amazing that he could do that. I didn't know he did that.
Yeah, there's like famous versions of like a lot of his Blood on the Tracks,
Mm-hmm.
Tangled Up in Blue. There's multiple versions of Tangled Up in Blue in the 70s where
Yeah.
there are whole verses that are not there and
Yeah.
whole sections that are pulled in or pulled out, or dynamics change or characters change. And it is, if you actually check a lot of his catalog, he does it a lot. And
Yeah.
actually, musicians, I interviewed an actual musician that worked with him, and some of his session players would have a hard time because he would, even in the studio,
Mm-hmm.
writing the song, he would change it.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "We practiced it like this, and you're changing it." It's like, well, that's the way it is. It's like,
Yeah, they just figure it out, right? Keep up. Did
yeah,
you
because
like that movie that they just came out with him about it? About
mm-hmm.
I thought it was good. I've been a fan of Bob Dylan from the artistic and poetry standpoint. I've never really been a fan of his songs or his voice, honestly.
Yeah.
But I loved that movie. I loved seeing the behind the scenes of his story. I loved seeing that love story. I loved the dynamics of everything and just seeing how it evolved, and like the overwhelm that he was feeling, because as an artist, I feel that too. You know, sometimes people are coming at you, and I thought it was great. And I thought Timothy did a great job at portraying him.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that people get overwhelmed or overloaded. Like a lot of artists, they have to kind of put a little wall up
Mm-hmm.
to kind of keep that from happening, because people don't realize you get this sensory overload, like synesthesia. It's just like,
Yeah, because those of us who are connected, we're connected because we've let go of other things or kept them out, like Bob Dylan did, right? He kept everything out, right? And so when you stay in that state of sensitivity, right, of creation, of self-connection, in that state of, of expansion, then when people start coming in, it can be really intense. It is like, a storm rolling in on a sunny day.
yeah, it's always interesting. Sometimes the artists, we need our kind of peace and quiet
Mm-hmm.
to create,
Mm-hmm.
and then people don't realize we kind of need that space.
Yeah.
And then they want to come into the space. It's like, well, I'm not ready for you to come into this.
I know. And so that's actually where my art and my work blend, because now I get the privilege of teaching people how to create that own space for themselves. Right. So you don't have to go to somebody else. You don't have to be codependent on the artists you love. You create your own art. You don't have to be codependent on somebody else to give you stability. You create your own stability. And these two things are basically the same thing.
That's real interesting. I think a lot of people in life, they're looking for their soulmate to complete them.
Right.
Or they're looking for...
Look in the mirror, babies. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror.
Yeah, because your soulmate, like if you don't solve your own self-love issue, that your soulmate's not going to solve it.
100%. 100%. And like I said, I'm just going to reiterate, because I know we're about to wrap up soon, but the first thing that you have to do is get stable, right? Get your emotional regulation. And then the second thing is learn how to let go, right? If you could do those two things, life can be extremely, extremely beautiful for you.
Yeah, you don't have to repeat the bad loops.
Well, I mean, yeah, we do, but you can handle them a little bit better. The loops,
the
loops are coming. You can't stop the loops.
Yeah, we just don't want to get stuck on repeat if you don't have to.
No. But, it's like they say that you repeat the same lesson until you figured it out. And some lessons we only have to do one time because they're easy and manageable, or, they're a little bit lighter. And then other ones we have to do 2 or 3 times. In fact, myself, I'm just coming out of one where I realized 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh my gosh, the same exact thing happened this time last year and this time the year before. Okay, where am I now that was different, and how do I, you know what I mean? And so sometimes it takes 3 times for you to go through the loop to see what it is that you need to see. You know what I mean? Because what it was I was missing was relaxing.
Oh, yeah.
Was not fighting, was the surrender, which is where we started at the beginning. And so even though you have the big surrenders, there's still lots and lots of moments after that where you get to practice and use that spiritual 6-pack that you built to remember, oh yeah, okay, I was here before. I know what to do, right? I know how to move this thing. I'm strong enough. I can do it.
Yeah, you have to give yourself some of that recovery time because I
Oh,
think some people like too many repetitions without any recovery, and then you kind of can damage
yes.
yourself.
Yes. And in our country, America's biggest addiction is productivity, right? We are addicted to productivity and we are very good at it. What we are all missing is the ability to slow down, to rest, and to connect with ourselves. We've got the masculine sorted. We know how to build things, we know how to make things, we know how to get money, we know how to create, and we are so good at the industrial side. Where we are going now and where I'm hoping to help people with is the slowing down. How do we stay emotionally regulated through these things? How do we stay connected to our heart through these things? How do we let go of all the stuff that isn't for us amongst the creation?
Well, I think that's really important. We'll close on that, but we do have your website, samanthajonesdarling.com/books. And that's where you can get books like I Am Ready and Just 3 months, which everything we've talked about, that will be fully clickable ladders to greatness. Yeah, why everything you've done, you've got a bunch of books.
I do. I have 4 books that I've written so far, and I'm actually in the middle of writing a couple of novels now, and I'm working on learning the language of screenplay writing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a
Yeah,
good place to go.
yeah, because I think those travel stories are going to meant to be on the screen.
Well, that's cool. Like I'm glad that you're multi
Oh yeah,
faceted creative, so we'll get to see you in different lanes. So that's
I
good.
hope so. I hope so. It was really fun to come on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here on a Saturday afternoon, and I want to thank you for being on the show today. And everybody, just remember that you can click on that URL on any of the platforms that we were on. We were just on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. We'll be on all the other platforms like Spotify, Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast by tomorrow. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun to talk with you, Phantom.
Thank you.